Now, while we talk about the original Mahabharatam, now before we start learning or looking at Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnayaha, which is our topic, we have to look at the original text, right? The original or the base text is Shri Mahabharatam, right? Now, in Bharata Varsha, in our Dharma also, the way Vangmayam goes, Vangmayam is literature. How it is formed is, we have first the Veda Vangmayam, the Vedas, then you have the Vedanta, then you have the Itihasas, then you have the Puranas. This is how the structure goes in, right? Shri Mahabharatam is a part of Itihasas. So, Ramayana, Mahabharatam, both are Itihasas, which we popularly call as epics, right? Now, it is not correct to call them as mythological texts. In English, very loosely we translate epics as mythological, right? Mythology, when we talk, it is a myth, right? It is something which is not true. But in the case of Ramayana and Shri Mahabharatam, these are not mythological stories. It is not a myth. It is itihasa. Itihasam is history, something that has happened, right? Itihasa. Now, why only Ramayanam and Mahabharatam fall in this category of itihasam is because Valmiki has composed Ramayanam, Vyasacharya has composed Mahabharatam. Both of these, Ramayanam and Mahabharatam, they are called as Arsha Mahakavya. Arsha meaning that which has been composed by rishis or sages. That's the reason it becomes Arsha. Now, most of you, if you are doing the Ramayana Paranam also, maybe Sundarakandam, Balakandam and so on, we know this, right? Ityarshe, Iti Arshe, Srimad Ramayane, Valmiki, and so on it goes. This is the reason. Moreover, both Valmiki and Vyasacharya, they were also a part of this story, right? Valmiki is a character of Ramayanam. Vyasacharya also is a part of Shri Mahabharatam, right? Valmiki, we know the Uttarakandam story where Sita Devi spends her life there. Her children Lava and Kusha were brought up in the ashrama of Valmiki. Also, in some references, we have Rama, Lakshmana, Sita who passed through the ashrama of Valmiki during the Vanavasam period. In the case of Vyasacharya from Mahabharatam, we know how Vyasa meets Yudhishthira in between during the Rajasuya Yagam, I suppose, or even the birth story of Vyasa, and so on. So, like this, some references come in. So, therefore, why I am telling you this is the reason why both Ramayanam and Mahabharatam, they are itihasa, because itihasa meaning this is what has happened. So, both Valmiki and Vyasacharya, they have compiled whatever they have written or whatever they have composed is something which has happened. They have just done the work of recording that is there. Yeah. So, like every day in the newspaper also you see, it will not be, we don't use our fiction, right? We don't use our imagination much. Just the information is printed. Similarly, Ramayanam and Mahabharatam also are texts wherein how things have happened in the same way it has been mentioned there. And again, like I told you, both of these sages, Vyasa and Valmiki, they also become a part of the storyline. That's the reason maybe they have composed this text quite near to when it has happened, because they were also a part of the major text. So, and of course, we have a lot of proofs, research, this and that take place to prove that Ramayanam and Shri Mahabharatam have taken place, right? So, the first point only, that Mahabharatam, Ramayanam, they are itihasa and not fiction that is there. Now, while we come to our topic of Shri Mahabharatam, I told you the structure of Mahabharatam, more than 1 lakh verses, including the Shri Harivamsha Puranam also, which is considered to be a part of Shri Mahabharatam. Now, Mahabharatam overall, it is divided into 18 Parvas. Like we have the Ramayanam, that is divided into 7 Kandas, starting from the Balakandam till the Uttarakandam. Similarly, Shri Mahabharatam is divided into 18 Parvas. Parvas is nothing but sections. Now, each of these Parvas, they have some detailing that is there, names of few characters. Now, under these parvas, every parva inside also has got, you can say, upa parvas, right? Now, first, we'll not go very much into detail of each of these parvas, but just to give you a gist, like for example, the first parva that is there is the Adi Parvaha. Adi, as the word itself suggests, the beginning or the start, the intro book, the introduction of the main epic. Meaning in this parva, what happens is the Kuru Vamsha that is there, and the entire Kuru dynasty, who all belong to the Kuru Vamsham, how the Pandavas and the Kauravas were born, what were the events which actually will lead to the conflict, will lead to the Yuddham later. Then we also have the birth story of Bhishma here. We have the story of Shantanu and Ganga, the parents of Bhishma, how later Bhishmacharya was born, what was the Bhishma Pratigna which Bhishma took in. So all this is described in this Adi Parva. Now inside this Adi Parvam also there are many sub Parvas that are there, right? Like it is said that in the Adi Parvam there are more than about 20 Parvas or so, and these Parvas are divided into 200 plus chapters. So that is how the depth or the content of the Mahabharatam becomes more. Like for example, in the Adi Parvam you have something called the Paushya Parva also. I'm just giving you 1-2 examples. Now this Paushya Parva that is there talks about stories of some unknown sages, that is not very common sages. Like for example, Aruni, Paushya, Janamejaya. So like this some references come in of these sages who are there. Then you have like in this also certain parvas which are told in the Adi Parva, like the gist of the entire Mahabharatam is described in the Adi Parva. Then you also have the Swayamvara Parva as a part of the Adi Parva where Draupadi Swayamvaram takes place. So like this, each of these parvas, they have sub-parvas inside. Now I'll just give you one example of the Adi Parva. Now we'll just look at all the other 18 parvas that are there. Next comes the Sabha Parvam. Sabha Parvam is the things that happen in the assembly hall, in the Sabha, wherein how the hall was built at Indraprastham by the Pandavas. Then you have the Dyutam, the very famous Dyutam, the game of dice that takes place where Yudhishthira ends up losing everything including himself and Draupadi. Now this parva is something which highlights what is defeat and what is honor, right? And how each of these parvas or each of these incidents, how they are very much relatable to our lives is, there are situations in our life also wherein we have to, at times we end up losing everything, right? Whatever we have, and slowly we have to end up rebuilding everything. So that is this parvam, it highlights upon that. Then you have the Vanaparva, Vanaparvam, the things that happened in the Vanam, in the forest, wherein the Pandavas had to go to Vanavasam. They end up meeting a lot of sages also. They talks about the stories that take place, including the most famous story of Nala and Damayanti. A very very popular Sanskrit epic also is a love story of Raja Nala and Princess Damayanti. If anyone is interested, you can definitely read that part also. A very very interesting story of Nala and Damayanti. Moreover, in this Parva, Vanaparvam, what it tries to signify is what are the hardships which one needs to undergo also at times. So life is not always going to be very smooth, right? Okay, one thing is our day has come in, I'm just living it very nicely. At night time I'm going to sleep again. Throughout the day, for each one of us, I'm not saying that our life is only full of dukkhas, we also have sukham, but there are always ups and downs that are coming in, right? Maybe now this minute I'm happy, next minute something, it cannot always be sorrow, but some disturbance can definitely come in, right? Maybe someone in a friendly manner also, someone might come and say, tell us something also, immediately our anger puffs in. So these are all small disturbances that can definitely happen. And in the case of the Pandavas, they had to undergo a lot of things during their Vanavasam period. So all that they endure during this time. Now it is believed that whatever happens in the Vanaparvam is something which makes the Pandavas very strong in future. It seems it was a Leela of Krishna only, to ensure that, it is said so, that the Pandavas during this Vanaparvam let them face all kinds of hard situations, difficult situations, so that later they can be prepared for any danger that they are going to have. Like we have the Dharma Yuddham also, which is going to take place later. Next comes the Virata Parvam. Virata Parvam specially talks about the 13th year of Vanavasam of the Pandavas, wherein they had to live in incognito, in disguise, in the kingdom of Virata. We know how each one of them, they change their forms also, and that's when Arjuna takes up the famous form of Brihannala, the female dancer who is there. And of course, and at this point, the Kauravas, Duryodhana gets a hint that maybe the Pandavas are living in the kingdom of Virata. That's when he wages a war against the Virata king, and a battle takes place between the Kauravas and the soldiers of Virata. Next comes the Udyoga Parva. Udyogaha meaning efforts. Now finally a time comes wherein it is like an eye opener for the Pandavas and Kauravas that now war is inevitable, right? We cannot avoid the war now. Now at this time what happens is a time comes in wherein now at this time, now the Pandavas, whatever was told by the Kauravas, everything was being done, right? First of all, they did not get their share of the kingdom. Then they lost the game of dice, they went into Vanavasam. 1 year, the 13th year, 12 years of Vanavasam. 13th year was spent in disguise. So all these conditions that were put in by the Kauravas, everything was done by the Pandavas. Lastly, when they returned back also, now in the Vanavasam period also, they were not allowed to stay comfortably, stay peacefully, like you have their house that was burnt in and so many other hardships that came in, right? Moreover, after returning back also, Yudhishthira even requested the Kauravas saying that you at least give us 5 villages for each of our brothers, if not the kingdom. That also Duryodhana refused, right? And there's a lot of other adharmic activities like the Draupadi incident that took place and many other wrongdoings happened. That is the reason where finally a conclusion comes in wherein the Yuddham is something which is inevitable, right? We have to have the Yuddham. There is a Dharma Yuddham. That's why the Mahabharata Yuddham is nothing but Dharma Yuddham. Today we talk about so many world wars and wars that are taking place between countries and so on. But the greatest battle of all times is said to be this Mahabharata Yuddham. In fact, it is said that now usually when we talk about in today's times also, now I think you have again the census which might come in, right? So whenever we talk about this population ratio, the sex ratio and so on, we usually have men who are more than women, right? And that is how it usually takes place. Of course, in today's times, maybe there is not that much of difference, but usually that's how is the case. The male population usually exceeds the female population. But it is believed that during the Kuru Yuddham that is there, the female population was more than the male population, it seems. Because every house had lost their father, husband, soldier, son, whoever it was. That was mass destruction which took place. Millions and millions of people had died during this war. There were a lot of innocent lives also that are lost, right? Now, though it is called as a Dharma Yuddham also, even if soldiers or people are fighting from the side of the Pandavas, definitely attacks can come, right? So, like this Kurukshetra Yuddham, why today also we call it as the Dharma Yuddham, though it was fought for establishing Dharma. In fact, it is said that Kurukshetram is in today's Haryana. It is said that there even animals also used to follow Dharma, it seems. That's how we have a popular story that goes out wherein Kashyapa, he tells a story saying that in Kurukshetram, even animals also follow Dharma. For that there is a story, I'll just tell you in gist now. In fact, now you know there are those ant hills that are there, right? A big ant hill wherein ants usually live inside. There was a snake who was living inside that hole, it seems, a female snake. That's when a male snake, now usually you see animals who are there, they usually are attracted to each other by touch, right? And in the case of snakes also, they have their only skin that is there, right? They don't have feet and other things. They can just crawl about here and there, and the most important feature of their body is the skin that they have. That's the reason we know how snakes, they keep changing and shedding their skin after some time, right? So that's the reason they crawl, and that's how they get attracted by touch. But in fact, it is said that Kashyapa Mahamuni highlights this, that in Kuru Yuddham, what happens is that male snake does not enter that anthill, it seems. The reason being, there was another female snake that was living inside that anthill or that snake hole that you call, and it was waiting for its male partner. And that snake that was there, it does not enter that anthill thinking that I am not the right man for this woman, that is for that female snake. The male snake, the partner of this snake is not there, so I should not even come near this hole. So that is how this was nothing but dharma, which usually we all follow, right? So even animals also had this feeling, it seems. So like this, lot of things are told about dharma, about this kshetram, Kurukshetra. So that is about this Udyoga Parvam, wherein lot of preparations were made for the war. Lot of things were told about duty, dharma and so on. Krishna also goes and explains to the Kauravas, Pandavas and so on. Finally, the Bhishma Parva comes in. Bhishma Parva marks the beginning of the Kuru Yuddham, and it is also said that the Gita is a part of the Bhishma Parva, wherein when Bhagavan gives the Gita Upadesham to Arjuna, when Arjuna was in a state of confusion, he does not know what to do, how to react, that's when Krishna does this Upadesham of the Gita. So that is again a main part of Bhishma Parvam, the beginning of the war and the Gita Upadesham. Drona Parvam is that war, like the name itself suggests, wherein the war took place under the command of Dronacharya. Finally, the death of Abhimanyu also takes place in the Drona Parva. Karna Parva, again, when Karna became the commander in chief, his war with the Pandavas and ultimately his death also. Next comes in the Shalya Parvam. After Karna, Shalya becomes the commander of the Kaurava forces. Again, what strategies Shalya put up, what were the battles that he fought, all that in detail. Now, I am just telling you the gist, right? All this is divided into chapters and chapters, right? Next comes the Sauptika Parvam. Sauptika, Suptaha, meaning sleeping. So, in the Sauptika Parvam, it is the description of the night wherein all the soldiers were sleeping. You have that time when Ashwathama comes and attacks the soldiers of the Pandava camp, and also the 5 children of Draupadi were lost in here. The innocent children were killed while they were in sleep by Ashwathama. Moreover, later you have the Shanti Parvam, finally, that focuses on the things that happened after the war, right? And what were, now this Shanti Parvam is a book, it is said to be a book for, like from the political aspect also. How governance should be there, how rulers should rule the kingdom and so on. So the principles of these have been described in the Shanti Parvam. Next you have the Anushasana Parvam. Anushasana Parvam is that Parvam wherein we have the most famous Vishnu Sahasranama, which all of us chant. The teachings or the 1000 names of Bhagavan which have been told by Bhishmacharya to Yudhishthira on the battlefield. So Anushasanam is nothing but instructions. So the teachings which were told by Bhishma, the instructions which were given by Bhishma to Yudhishthira on various aspects, how you should rule your kingdom, what are the principles of governance and so on. So all this Bhishmacharya tells while he was laying down on the bed of arrows. Next you have the Ashwamedika Parva, Ashwamedha sacrifice, as the name itself suggests, which was performed by Yudhishthira to establish his authority, to establish his rule as a king. Next comes is the Ashrama Vasika Parvaha, meaning the book of the Ashrama Vasi, the book of hermitage that is there, wherein now in the Ashwamedika Parva, after Yudhishthira performs the Ashwamedha sacrifice, he rules over the kingdom nicely. Later slowly Vanaprastha, meaning they leave the kingdom to go to the forest also, wherein they reflect back upon their life, what are the duties which are remaining to do and so on. Next comes the Maushala Parvam. Maushala Parvam is the end of Krishna Avataram, finally. That is Maushala Parvam. Maushalaha is actually club, which club Dadha that we call, that fight, the destruction of the Yaduvamsham that is there by fighting amongst each other. And finally also the Krishna Avataram comes to an end. Bhagavan also leaves to Vaikuntham. That's when the Pandavas also say that now that our own Sakha, Bhagavan, friend, cousin, whoever is there, if he has left Guru, there is no meaning for us also to live in. That's when they also take Mahaprasthanam. Mahaprasthanam is the great journey that takes place, the final journey of the Pandavas. They leave behind their kingdom and everything and head towards the Himalayas. Finally is the Swargarohana Parvam. Swargarohana Parvam, wherein each of the Pandavas they reach heaven. Wherein finally we know the story that only Yudhishthira reaches heaven. All of the Pandavas in between only they fall apart. Yudhishthira we know is a form of dharma. That's the reason a dog also follows along with him. So like this is how you have the entire Mahabharatam that is divided into 18 parvas. Each parvam talks about some incidents that are there, what are the characters, what is the nature of those characters, and what is the teaching that is told by each of these parvas. So that is how these 18 parvas of Mahabharatam are described.